Do you allow me to also start with a few questions? Because I would like to understand a bit the audience that I'm facing today. Great pleasure to be here, but I would like to understand where you're coming from, what you're currently working on. So maybe you just raise your hand if you're working on innovation. Okay. Who of you is working on innovation, broad, wide innovation in any sort? Few? Okay. Who of you is working in a startup? A few more. Good. Who of you is working on something related to medical or health? Ahmed. Oh, some more. Okay, excellent. That's really where I'm coming from. And well, when I did reach out and when we started to talk with Simunsa, we quickly came to this title here, Innovation in the Digital Space, going from idea to product. That's really also where I'm focusing at the moment very much in my current role. But maybe before I get started, I would like to mention one thing. I come from a different continent. I know a few things about how to innovate in digital space in Europe. But I have to say that you're much more knowledgeable in how to innovate successfully here in Zambia or in Africa. I'm not the expert on innovation here in Africa. And there's many things, obviously what I'm going to tell from my side is biased on what my experience is from Europe. It might be true also here. I hope some of it is true also here. Otherwise, we have a difficult evening. But I believe also some of the things will not hold exactly true also here. Yeah, I think let's discover that, what is maybe the same, what is making sense also for Zambia and Africa in general, and what is maybe not making sense, because it really works different. Okay? Good. Here's quickly how I was structuring the presentation. I will start with a brief intro. I don't want to make this an advertising show for the company I'm working for, but still, I believe I need to give a quick background on the digital hub at Gersheimer. This is where I really work on. I would also like to speak about really what is the problem in innovation and the problem essentially that startups are facing as well. It's the same, whether it's corporate innovation or startups, they face similar problems. I would then also talk about, that's really not advertising, it's actually really just telling to you how we try to address these problems in innovation and what innovation process we have established at Gersheimer. Probably a few things to take out of that if you're working in that space. The last part will be a few learnings, more or less structured, a few takeaways that I would throw into the room, and we can discuss whether that makes sense or not for the things you're working on. Okay? We will have time for questions at the end of the presentations, but also throughout the presentation. Whenever you have a question, whenever something is not clear from what I'm telling or from what is on the slide, interrupt me, please, at any point. It's not so many slides that I have prepared. Okay? Wrong button. Apologies. All right. Yeah, I was introduced already a little bit. I did a master in electric large-scale computer up in scientific papers, going to the conferences. Many interesting things came together. I was enjoying it, definitely. It was also quite successful. At the same time, I felt this is not it. I'm not a and have this curiosity in understanding how things work. I'm more the problem solver. As a consequence, I went into industry. I've been working now for more than 10 years in the medical device software industry. Started off as a software engineer in C#, .NET, also a bit C++. Took over more responsibilities around project management. Engineering at Gersheimer. There, I'm part of the digitalization and growth initiative to strategically grow the digital health business at Gersheimer. I do. At the core, we develop mobile and web software systems, but also I'm quite involved in setting up the products and projects, and also looking at acquisitions, technology strategy, and so on. Okay, good. Then let me quickly introduce the company. So Gersheimer, it's at the core, it's a pretty boring company that is mostly focusing on producing packaging solutions for medications. It can be plastic or glass, a little bit of packaging for cosmetic products. But quite large, almost 2 billion dollar in revenue. They're present. They have 40 plants, 14 countries. They serve all of the top 10 pharma companies. So really quite significant in size, but hugely boring at the core. Except for this part here on the right-hand side, where it starts to become interesting, if you ask me. And that's also where where I'm working for. It's where we do develop intelligent drug delivery system. I will explain in more detail what that really means. To grow this digital health business, they have established a digital hub that is essentially tasked to create new businesses in digital health. It's all started in 2 years ago, so fairly new still. We have 3 parts. One part is around product management, one part including UI, UX, and all the skills that are involved. But maybe more interesting, let me explain one of the products that we are currently working with. It's a product for medication that is to inhale, especially for asthma and COPD patients. You need to know that 70% of these patients have to show not properly inhale their medication. And if you do not properly inhale the medication has a minor effect or no effect at all. Actually, you still have the side effects, but you do not have the wanted effect of the medication. So it's not great. So we felt that is an opportunity to throw some technology at it. We have developed this. So this is the inhaler that you can buy at the pharmacy with a corticoid medication. And this is an add-on device. It snaps on top of the inhaler, and it's measuring essentially the airflow. So the inhalation maneuver is actually quite complex. You need to shake the inhaler first, then you need to inhale at a certain flow rate for a certain duration, then you need to hold the breath, and then you exhale again. it's somehow manageable with a bit of training for a healthy individual like me. For somebody who is hardly able to breathe, it's actually a challenge. And so this add-on device here, it's measuring actually the airflow during the inhalation process. And from that, we can tell whether it was a good inhalation, whether it was not so good inhalation, and what part or which part of the inhalation maneuver should be improved. And we do that through a mobile app here on the left-hand side, where we show a few numbers and an indication of whether it was good or not. More interestingly, even, if the patient has been inhaling a lot of volume, and then the volume is getting smaller and smaller and smaller from day to day, that is actually a sign that the disease is worsening and the patient should better see a doctor. Because probably he needs an adaptation of the medication, or probably he needs to have some more detailed examination before he's ending at an emergency in a hospital. So that was our idea, or is still our idea, and that's one of the products that we're working on. It's connecting a sensor here that is measuring two things actually. It's measuring the administration of the medication on the one hand side. At the same time, it's also measuring a function of the body. So that's why we call it a biosensor. On the other side, there's a mobile app. Actually, the most for me, the most interesting part is not even here on the slide. Forgive me for that. The web app for doctors, for the healthcare professionals, to look at the data and analyze the data and decide on that data which patient should they call in for a follow-up. Good, that's a product. Then the commercialization is then with the pharma company who has the medication and the commercialization of the medication, and that's a bit how we work. We have a few of these products that we're at the moment developing, but this is maybe the most advanced one. And really, in broader terms, what we are working on is the following problem. This is a patient that has skin cancer. You see him here prior to a new treatment. And the next time, so that's when the doctor sees him. Next time the doctor, he was called in for a follow-up visit, he looked like this, right? 15 weeks after treatment. Looks great, sounds good. 23 weeks after treatment, 8 weeks later, he was called in again in this stage. So that's the information that the doctors have. So effectively, it was part of a study. So the patient was looking at the symptoms or reporting the symptoms on a day-to-day basis, and that's here indicating how day-to-day the patient was. In blue, solid blue, this is the follow-up visit. And the ones with a blue looked at or which were reported by the patient as part of the follow-up visit. You know, you don't mention that 2 months ago you had chest pain, right? So that's the limited piece of information, and we believe that with technology, you can do so much better at monitoring what is really going on and bring that truth to the follow-up visit, bring all that information in an easy-to-digest way to the doctor when the patient is called in for a follow-up. So essentially what we are doing is that first we want to have the drug delivery done by the patient. We believe the self-administration is so much easier, so much more convenient also, and in many cases safer than if the patient has to go to the hospital for each and every case. And through connectivity and digital applications, we want to bring it to personalized interventions, to really have, we believe we can have then all the data available to really tailor the intervention to the specific need. So I mentioned it's a biomarker. It's a disease management application where you can monitor therapy compliance, give guidance, etc., and some additional services, especially for doctors to help them better triage and decide on which patient to focus. Obviously, working on such a product involves a very interdisciplinary team. I've mentioned here the most important disciplines which are typically in such a team. And yeah, you see from the sheer number, I will not go through them one by one, but it's a lot. They all have to come together, and that is actually really where the interesting stuff happens. Good. So much in terms of advertising, but maybe it's good to understand my background, where I'm coming from. Good. What is really the problem in innovation, and especially the problem that startups are facing, that corporate innovation projects are facing, and well, essentially, the problem that keeps us awake. The problem is the following. The truth is most startups fail. Hope I'm not the first one to tell you that. I believe not, right? So the numbers don't lie. Failure is a pretty good site, pretty interesting to look and to the failure and sometimes also success stories of the startups. That's where I have the numbers from. Overall, 9 in 10 startups fail. We are a bit lucky. In tech and digital space, they say 8 in 10 startups fail. 40% say they fail because they run out of cash. I would argue that this is not quite true. They just say they fail because they run out of cash. And well, they do run out of cash, but that's not the root cause. There's a root cause why I believe there's a root cause why they cannot raise funds anymore. 35% say they fail because there is no market need. That's brutally honest, but I believe it's even more because some of the 40% here actually they cannot raise funds because there's no market need, or nobody's believing there's no market need. Another truth that hurts is that startups take 2 to 3 times longer to validate their opportunity in the market than they initially expect. And that's essentially what we try to address. And the only reasonable way to address that is to take step by steps, take out risks as we go, as early as possible, with as little investment as possible. And that's, again, the same for startups and corporate innovation. Let me run you through the innovation process that we have implemented. By the way, I was very happy to hear that I believe Bongohive has a very similar approach, and so let's maybe later connect it to the Bongohive process. On our side, we start with ideation, really brainstorming, looking at startups that cross our way, interesting stuff that happens, whatever. Then that's really the start of the innovation phase. And in the innovation phase, we want to be really quick. There's still many ideas. We look at them in a bit more detail. It is followed by a phase to establish the market proof, followed by a feasibility phase. We intentionally have separated the two, the development phase and phase. And you see the funnel, obviously. So from phase to phase, we kick out some of the ideas, and some of the ideas do not make it. And we're brutal, especially in the early phase. For a simple reason, if it is making its way here and is dying here, it's costing us so much, right? So from here onwards, after the feasibility, if we give it a green light after the feasibility, and after having established a sort of market proof, we want it to succeed. We want it to survive. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day. So every phase has a goal to achieve. In the innovation phase, we want to find an opportunity and to evaluate it to find out if it's a problem worth solving. Obviously, it is a problem. It's easy to find problems, but is it a problem that is worth solving? To understand that, we build some very minimal prototypes. Can be just a 3D drawing thing, or something that looks like we would have the software, but maybe we have just designed one screen. So it's really minimal what we are building there. Much more important is to understand the business model and to think through who is the customer segment, who are really the ones we can talk to in the next phase. So when this is established, when we have an idea about the business model, we have identified and defined the exact opportunity, that's when we head for the market proof, where we do build a proof of concept and prove that the solution is really wanted. So it's not a minimal viable product at this point. It gives the impression sometimes, but really on our side, it is important to see that there is somebody out there who is really, really interested in this and wants to pay for it. The moment he can pay for it, he wants to pay for it. That's essentially what we are aiming for in the market proof. Only once this is established, and I come back to that in a moment, only when this is established, we even look at the feasibility stage. So only then we prove that the solution really works and that it can be built in reasonable cost. In the development phase, this is really when we develop the commercial scale product and also bring the solution first time to the market, followed by the life cycle phase where we scale it. Okay? Is that clear? Good. Yeah, I mentioned it before. It's costing us so much if products do not make it in the development phase or after development phase. That's why we have so many stages, and that's why we grow also the investment from very large to bigger. Good. Even when we have a product, let's say we have a product, we have a pilot here, we have a pilot running with a hospital or whatever to build a specific minimal product. Still, the actual development is starting very late. Let me run you through that. So first we start by specifying the product through requirements, defining also a project scope. Next phase is that we map out the user journey. So we define a few personas for the most important stakeholders and map out all their interactions with the product. As a next phase, we build some low fidelity prototypes, can be wireframes, can be even hand-drawn sketches on a whiteboard. In that phase also we work on the navigation. Often we use brainstorming for this, and only once this is good enough, we produce some high fidelity prototypes. Typically we use Figma. It's a great tool to do. You can do the screen design there. You can also do the click dummies there. And that's where we produce really the accurate screen designs that are then given to the development team. Only once this is established, really, we start to code. We do some architecture work. We start to think about the technology stack and things like that in parallel earlier, obviously, in this phase. But really, this here is really the moment when the development teams is coming in at scale. I could do an entire evening on this part here, on how to test software. We decided for another topic, but we split into alpha testing, beta testing. Alpha testing is the internal testing. We use heavily CI/CD and continuous testing strategies. Unit testing, automated testing is very important to us. Obviously, manual testing is still on the plate, cannot be completely replaced. Beta testing is then when it's becoming live, where we test with a limited, it's a limited testing period with selected users. So you see, even here, the first half of the work is with quite low resources involved, and only once we have properly understood and properly defined what it should do in all the details, that's when we produce the bigger costs. Let me put it this way. Good. Questions to that part? All right, let's move on. I mentioned before a few learnings that I would like to share, and if you disagree, jump in, okay? So one learning that is really important, I put it to the title even, is do not start expensive development early. That was the first product here that we have been engaged with, and we did everything wrong. Trust me. For sure, before we even understood properly the market, we have started to develop this guy. In retrospect, this guy here would be the last I would do. For a long time, you can replace this guy here with a 3D printed thing, and nobody will even notice. Nobody will even care. Okay, so really, it makes no sense to start and this to develop such a thing that you can produce at mass scale. It's costing millions and millions. So it is much smarter to properly understand the needs of all the users, the potential in the market, all the mechanics out there before you really head into this. Because, you know, and in this phase of finding out if it's real or not, you can, as I said, put a 3D printed thing on the plate, on the table, and you explain, well, this is the measuring device. People will take it. They will believe it, at least for the duration of the conversation. Obviously, if they take it home, it doesn't work. But for the duration of an interview, for a conversation, that is totally fine. It allows you to find and validate the product market fit. You can do many tests with that at this stage already. Interview surveys, you can do landing pages, fake door methods. If you haven't heard about that, fake door method, it's a great method to properly understand what is building, what is causing an interest, what is really building, helping you to build attraction. And so only then, once you're really, really sure, and really you cannot reasonably become more sure except by building the thing that is costing so much, that's probably the moment when you should build the thing that is costing you so much. But you can actually get a long way without building it. It's much more reasonable to be very defensive in building than the thing. Well, once you have built so much traction and so much positive results, at some point you will be able to find the funds to build this expensive thing. Can be a sensor like this one, can be another thing, right? You can also consider like a concierge service before you invest into expensive tech development, where you essentially replace the expensive tech with a manual process in the background. To the front, to the user, it behaves like the real product, but effectively you have minimized your investment at this stage. As I said, for the sake of an interview, you can already also pretend that you have already developed it. I believe that's fair. As long as you do not start to market the product that you don't have. Yeah, and at the end of the day, well, one of the difficult things here was actually, or one of the, we had many difficulties, but one of the things that currently we struggle is that we have not properly defined the MVP for our target customer segment. We did believe that by just recording the flow during the inhalation and showing it to both the patient and the doctor, we would provide enough value for a minimum viable product. Turned out the doctor felt this is not enough. They would want to see also how the patient is doing, how the patient is developing over time, and whether it was a good inhalation or not. And so that caused essentially us to develop a product which was not meeting the expectation of the primary customer. It's a bad thing. Okay, don't do that. So really, once you start to develop an MVP, be sure that the MVP specs are meeting what your customer segment is expecting from you. Overdoing is not good, but not meeting the expectation is giving you a very hard time and can make you fail. Okay, good. How many of you have an engineering degree? Some. Okay. If you have an engineering degree, I would encourage you to not look at feasibility first, but to only look at desirability and viability. I mean, you know the terms probably from the design thinking. So maybe let me introduce them first. Let me start with desirability. So desirability means is there really a customer, a user that is willing to pay for that product? Is there somebody who really wants to have it? The second one is viability. It's kind of the business aspect. What is a viable business model? Is there a viable business model for that, where essentially the revenue can outweigh the costs? The third one is feasibility. It's a technical aspect. Can we really build it? Will it work? Yeah, essentially, if you end up not having a viable product, yeah, well, you will not be able to pay salaries at the end of the day. If it's not desirable, that's when there's no market need. I think we had that in the beginning. And well, if it's not feasible, technically not feasible, then you cannot deliver a product, so you're going to get stuck. And really, you need to find out all the three. You need to find this sweet spot where there's somebody who wants to have it, where you can pay the salaries, and that you can actually build. If you have an engineering background, usually your brain is even, technology can do so much, especially in digital space, that your brain is hard. It's hard for your brain to think outside of this feasible bubble. So you can actually safely focus on desirability and viability first, before then later on going back to feasibility. Also, just, if you don't come from an engineering angle at it, just involve an engineer early, and they will put you safely into this domain here, because technology by now can do so much. But really, our experience is very much that we need to focus so much on desirability and viability first before looking at feasibility. The other reason is desirability and viability are rather inexpensive to figure out and to investigate, whereas feasibility involves many engineers quite quickly and a lot of investments quite quickly. So that's another reason why I suggest you to look at feasibility in a separate step a little bit later to the other two. Okay? No, it's too bad. Ahmed already left. That would have been the slide for him. Um, let me spend one slide that is really specific to digital health and to medical software. In medical software, you have a multi-tiered market. What that means is the actually beneficiary of the product that you're doing is usually the patient, right? You're doing something to treat a patient or to help a patient in one or another sort. But the patient is not the one who is going to make the decision for the product. So the patient will not be the one who is choosing exactly your product or your medical software. It's somebody else. The somebody else is usually the physician. So a doctor will prescribe you a specific device or a specific treatment. Now, also the physician is not cannot choose by his liking. He is constrained by what the provider is offering, what is available to him, essentially. And also there's a constraint in the payer. So, well, not so much here, I guess, as the healthcare insurance is just about to start. But especially in Europe and US with the healthcare plans, the payer is actually restraining the devices that can be prescribed. So only what is being paid for by the payer can also be prescribed. So by setting their rules and regulations and they control what is on the plate and what is not on the plate. So all of them need to be positive in order for your product to be successful. That's quite difficult. To make it more difficult, you're not allowed to do trial and error. That, yeah, it would be nice, but not so fair to patients. Also, the markets are hugely segmented. At least you have one market per country. In the US, you actually have several different healthcare markets for the different segments of the healthcare system. And then finally, the product launches are very costly because of the regulatory limitations. And also because then really you have to get into the clinics, you have to get into the doctor offices in order for them to get to know your solution. So even though the topic is fun, actually it is a quite difficult place to do innovation. One way to do it, and so you have these 5 different stakeholders at least. One way to go about that is that you map out for each group of stakeholder their pain, your proposition, and the proof that your proposition is building traction or is building an interest for that. But obviously, you see, it's so much more difficult than you have if you have a direct B2C product. All right, but that's a framework that we sometimes use. We call it 8P. For your particular problem, you might adapt it by mapping out the different stakeholder groups that have a say in adopting your product, and pain, proposition, proof are kind of the 3 dimensions or the 3 hurdles you need to take. Okay. One thing that I see quite often is that startups struggle to build partnerships, especially I have the impression that it is easy for startups to build partnerships with other startups, but once they should build a partnership with a corporate or with a venture capital or some other funding partner, they start to struggle. I think this is not quite justified, and I believe a lot of it is also, part of it is mindset, some of it is maybe also tools and education. I really believe that strategic partners can provide the startups access to new markets. Actually, not just startups, even for corporate innovations, strategic partnerships are hugely important to access new markets, increase the resources, improve the credibility. We have seen many places where corporate partner with another corporate in order for their corporate to understand that this is a great thing that they're doing. Okay, you got it? So that's how it works. It's really having partners is a badge of that you have earned. It's giving you credibility. Obviously, that's simple. Strategic partners expand the customer base and reach, because it's then your reach plus the partner's reach. This helps the startup to validate the business idea. You have a partner with whom you reflect on the business idea. They can give you nudges. They can maybe give you advice in one or the other direction, on which you should really think as well. They help you to better scale, and ultimately they help you to better finance. What I feel is hugely important is that as a startup, but also as a corporate innovation group, you enter these partnership discussions with a very clear idea of what you want to achieve, what you want to get out of the partnership, and what you can offer in return. We like to use this partnership canvas. Maybe some of you have. Oh, sorry. Maybe some of you have seen it already. This one here. You essentially start by what is my desired value? So what would I like to get from that partner? You fill in what do you offer to that partner in return, right? It's a give and take. And ultimately, what is the created value out of the partnership? You fill that in for you. The partner is feeling the same on his side, and then you can take the one from the partner, turn it around, and you map your desired values with the values offered from the partner, and the values offered from your side, you map them to the desired values from the partner. Ideally, you find some here that matches with some here, and some here just matching with some here. And that's when you start to have a partnership discussion. It is then even more powerful if the direction, if the created value is also somewhat aligned. The transfer activities are then the activities that you really do as part of the partnership. So that's when you say, okay, as part of the partnership, I will do this, this, and this, and you will do this and that. Okay? It's a very good tool. Look it up, Partnership Canvas, you will find it online. But I did bring it up already. You need to prepare yourselves even before heading into the discussion. And then these partnership discussions take a lot of time. They usually don't cost much, right? Maybe a travel trip here and there. But at the core, they don't cost much. Building a partnership doesn't cost you much, except for time. So you really need to be quite careful to not open up too many partnership discussions, because they can even keep you busy. It can cause you just to lock up. And so you end up in a situation where you have hardly any time to focus on your business idea. You just end up managing potential partnerships. And obviously that is also not leading anywhere. Sometimes also what I see is that startups become very afraid of the corporate partner or of the funding partner. They start to constrain themselves. They start to be afraid of giving things away. Then immediately making the startup small and the partner large. And you want to have here, you want to have this partnership at eye level. So the more confident that the startup can act in their venture, and the more confident the startup can enter into these partnership discussions, the more can come out of it. it is really important to be open, but at the same time be very confident in the idea that you're pursuing and into what you bring to the table. Usually, actually, except for money, the partners will not bring so much more to the table than the startup is bringing. Okay, and so I can really only encourage anybody working on startups or even corporate innovation to start building partnerships as early as day one. Okay? Good. That's actually all I prepared for tonight. Thank you very much for your interest. Thank you so much for the participation. For questions, would be very, very happy to get some questions and get the discussion started. Thank you. Yes. Fake door method? Okay. Yes, can do. So you'll find it online as well. Feel free. Okay, the question was what is the fake door method? The fake door method works as such. You build a fake door, essentially a fake landing page for your product. The landing page doesn't even give the proper contact, so it doesn't really trace back to you. But you then measure, you do a lot of analytics on that landing page and you advertise for it. And you measure very exactly who is picking up on that fake door, on that fake landing page. And with what content on the landing page are they interacting? Out of that, you experiment then, changing landing page, by changing advertising, on what works, what doesn't work. And all of that is obviously with very minimal investments, right? You build this landing page, and you buy a little bit of ad space, and that's it. But it gives you real results. So because the
You had a question? Yeah, I just want to find out. You to Zambia. What are you working on while you're here? And how did you find out about Bongohive?
That's a good question. Thank you. I was actually in Zambia 20 years ago. I was here as a volunteer working for an NGO, totally not tech related. So it was at the beginning of my professional career, but it was very much forming for me. It was a tremendous time. I hugely enjoyed it. Made good friends here. Even some of the friends we stayed in contact until today. And now, 20 years later, it was time for me to come back to Zambia. So imagine having not seen Zambia for 20 years. It is a change. No, it's great. I mean, hugely happy now to show it to my family and to be back here in Zambia. I love it. I'm thrilled. And but also then, I was starting to look out for ways to maybe, when I was working here as a volunteer, it was not not far away from what I do professionally. And I felt that I have a small backpack of experience, professional experience, and I was looking for ways to combine that essentially. Is there part of my professional experience that I can bring back to Zambia? And as part of that, I ended up finding Bongohive, that they're really doing great work here as an incubator. And yeah, I connected, and that's how I ended up here tonight. I will also stay in touch with Bongohive. I can be available as a mentor to startups I can also be available for some corporate innovation programs to set that up and help to structure them. Okay. Some more questions?
Hello. I'll make it as basic as I can.
Pardon?
I'll make it as basic as I can. I have an idea. Where do I start?
I would start with a elevator pitch deck. You know what it is? So really starting with what's the problem, what's your proposed solution, and a few more slides, 5, 10 slides. If you still believe, then it's an idea. Then you go from there. Once so I do like very much all the strategizer tools, business model canvas, value proposition canvas. I would then start to poke around there. Start once you fill in these canvases, they help you so much to understand really the problem that you're addressing and all the mechanisms around that problem that you want to address. If then you're still positive that it is an idea, yeah, I would get in contact with the guys here at Bongohive, I guess, because it helps you so much to structure. It helps you so much to work with others who are coming in, taking your idea apart, and looking what is still working and put it back together. Did I answer the question or? Yeah. Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
What would be, if you were to give one lesson to a developer who's looking to be able to move from just, him doing it within a career to potentially being able to scale out and offer this to other people as a freelancer, for example, what would be that one advice you tell such a person to ensure that they go into it and eventually become successful?
I think the big difference between the big step involved in that is actually to make people aware that you exist and aware of your expertise as a developer. And so there's, well, the, you need to first become aware of what you can really offer, right? So become aware of your value, really, where am I solid, where am I maybe not so solid. If you want to be acting as a freelancer, you can only work on the parts where you are really solid. I mean, there's no mercy for freelancers. They're out of the door next day if they don't deliver, right? Story if you employ somebody, but if it's a freelancer, you're only freelancing to somebody who is working on something that he has done already a few times. Yeah, that's the basics. So people need to or you get employed, and as part of employment, you grow your professional expertise.
Thank you very much. I wanted to find out from you, what are some of the exciting research areas in, I think, digital health? You focus more on digital health. So let's say someone looking to do research, academic research in digital health. What areas would you advise someone to focus on?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest topic in academia related to medical is probably all around machine learning and artificial intelligence and what that can do to medical products. The data is quite available for medical problems. imaging, with sensors that measure stuff. It is available, but to really make sense out of it, that is often the biggest challenge, and that's where AI and ML is coming in with a very interesting proposal. Especially because it's also allowing the doctor to digest information in a very short time. Doctors are very restricted in their time available for the specific patient, and so AI and ML can very much reduce the burden for them to go through a lot of information and find out which is the critical information that they need to know. So that's obviously one thing. Another thing is all around interoperability and exchange of information products. So make medical information flow from one place to another place and interact so that you have maybe a thermometer measuring one thing and a blood pressure meter measuring the blood pressure. Would be good to have both information. It's important to have both information in one place, right? So that interoperability, and also that this information is then landing at the doctor and in the hospital, and it's accessible there. That is another topic that is very big in research. Especially, I feel here in Zambia, data protection, data privacy is not such a big topic, but in Europe it is a huge topic. Also in the US, it is a big topic, especially in the medical domain. And there a lot of crypto technology. It's actually used, quite interesting crypto applications, to have that information flow at the same time ensure that the patient is the only one who is really in control of their information. So that's another. Crypto is actually also quite interesting in medical applications. Okay. Yes.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Oh, you did mention that you
Can you
pretend.
speak up a little bit?
Oh, you did mention that you have to pretend you've already developed. How do you pretend that you've already developed your idea?
That picture of the product that I showed, right? The mobile app on there, it was not developed, right? You haven't noticed? No. Okay, good. By now we have developed the mobile app, but it looks different than the one I had on the picture. So that's how it works. From a single picture, you cannot easily tell whether this mobile app has been developed or not. At the end of the day, all you know, there's a picture of a mobile app, and this is what the picture or what the mobile app would look like on this picture. The rest of it is not known until you have it running on your mobile phone. But but obviously you cannot market such a thing, right? Like that, right? There's no point. But if you are early phase and you want to understand if it's real and if somebody's going to be interested in that mobile app, I feel it is viable to just have that picture of a potential mobile app and show it to somebody and pretend for this 1 hour that you're talking to him or her that this is real. Okay, that's what I mean. And at the end of the conversation, you have the result that you needed. And you have maybe a positive result, which will unlock funding for your project. And that's when you develop, and that's when you can then market it really. Okay? Good.
Okay, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you for the presentation once more. My question goes back to is it the innovation process where you have the ideation, the market research, and everything like that? So there are different issues. Well, let's say startup schools like Y Combinator. Say if you're a startup, it's best to start fast, like start your MVP as fast as possible. So how, maybe let me phrase it this way. How can you go through the whole process and still be able to start up fast?
It's true. Let me maybe quickly go back to the process. Yeah, maybe this one. We are mostly working on products for the medical domain, so we need to get regulatory approval by the authorities before we can even market them. Just getting the regulatory takes you easily half a year to 1 year. So, and that's here, right, at the end. It's 1 year that you just lose. In this time, you can't even develop your product anymore. And also I mentioned that innovation in medical is a bit more difficult. So for us, it's actually 4 years. Truth to be told, I don't like it myself, but it's taking 4 years. Just recently, I met a startup. They were founding themselves, and 1 year later, they had their product approved on the market. I went to them and I was like, gosh, us it takes 3 to 4 years, and we are not so slow. How do you do that in 1 year? Well, we were starting up and funding the thing, and yeah, we're here, right? And but then I was like, yeah, but when you found it, what did you have already? You started before, right? Oh yeah. We started 3 years before founding it, and then 3 years plus the 1 year where we incorporated. Yeah, okay, that's 4 years. So, truth to be told, especially in the medical domain, it takes you time. And I believe also the difference is just that in many other domains, you can hit the market with something that is already here. Here it's already good enough. Something that is rough behind the scenes. It's attracting some paying customers, very few. But maybe it's good enough as an MVP, and then you hit the market already here. Then this is in half a year, right? So that depends a bit on the industry, is maybe my answer. For the medical industry, we need a pretty long process for the mentioned reasons. But still, what I would like to encourage, I believe also in other industries, it's not a very good idea to start building the product too quickly. I believe all of the things that I've shown were actually not just for medical. Really, I believe it's hugely important to think about desirability, viability, really. What is the business model at the core? What is the target customer segment? How do you create value for them? To think about that before you start to write software. Because writing the software will not help you to answer these questions. And the chance is 99% that the software that you're writing will not deliver the value, at least not the potential value, and will not fit the exact target customer segment. Because as you start to write the software, you make so many choices, and in each choice, you have 50% chance to get it wrong. Right? And if you multiply it up, you have a 99% chance to get it wrong. So I would encourage to really research the business proposal into which you're venturing before you really build the thing. And also then getting feedback early, go out with some rough sketches of what the software will look like, or you think it will look like, get some feedback. Is that helpful to solve their problem? Would they be willing to pay for that? How much would find out? A hugely complicated problem is finding out the proper pricing for your product. So there's so much homework to be done, which you should probably do before you writing the software. And that's maybe something that I would encourage for you, regardless of the industry.
So just to add on to that question, let's say you already started. Is it still possible for you to start from the ideation stage because you're already on it? And maybe let's say you didn't go through these phases and you just
Yeah, for sure. You can always go back. And actually, as you go here, as you go to these stages, you're always being thrown back. It's not fun, but that's why these circles are here. Then something that you did actually work on here already turned out to be wrong, and you go all the way back. It's really, things are breaking along the process constantly. And whenever things are breaking, you need to think or start to find out, what can I still put back together, what is still working, and what do I need to throw out. So the idea, the business proposal is actually changing. It's transforming along the way constantly, because you learn. It can even die, right? But even if it survives, the idea is for sure not the same anymore that you had initially. But it's probably a better idea. You also see all the startups that had one idea. They started to develop towards that idea. And then a small part of their idea, maybe something that they did just as a homework, as an enabler for their main idea, turned out to be the thing that built traction. And so they venture off, they pivot, and they go into another direction. Right? It's because one part was solid of their idea, another part, the big part, was maybe not solid, and they managed to pivot, focus on the solid part, and build a product and a venture out of that. Okay, did I answer the question? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. How do you find the right partners?
Oh, difficult question. We actually have a champion in finding the partners. In the group, we have one guy that is constantly going to congresses, meeting up with all startups, meeting up with incubators. His job is to find whoever is out there, and he's great at it. I don't know how he manages, but no, really, it's getting to know the people. It's not easy. It's not something that you can do just from looking at a web page, right? A lot of it is also the human interaction, understanding who is behind that project, that startup. How are they behaving? Do we believe we can work with? Do we want to work with those guys? It's also an important factor. And so I don't have an easy answer to that question, frankly speaking. But being out there, being present, connecting as often as possible, talking about your idea is definitely something important to become visible at all. Even us as a corporate partner, we constantly need to do that. We need to go out, talk to people, like me here, but this is maybe not a topic. No, but we need to go out and talk to people, make ourselves visible. It's an important factor also in our work.
Just two last questions.
Concerning the partnerships, how can you carefully have patience, or rather handle partnership discussions that take long?
Yeah, I don't know. No, at the end, all I can say is maybe it is a problem. It is a real problem, and especially for the startup side, but also for the corporate innovation side, it's important to define timelines and to stick to those timelines, enforce these timelines. Make it visible and transparent if things are not moving along according to the timeline, and the partner is delaying the thing. It's usually not a good thing. Usually a partner, as part of the discussion, the partner will not tell you, "Hey, let's stop talking." He will just delay, right? And so, if you start to see the delays coming in the partnership discussions, be very sensitive. Is it actually the partner who is not interested anymore in this partnership? Or is it just because the corporate partner is slow or the funding is slow, and it's how it is? So you need to be very sensitive about that. Often it's a silent no to the partnership itself and to the partnership opportunity.
All right. So my question is in marketing. Yeah. So let's just say you built a product, an application or website. You have it on the Play Store. So for you're coming from a country like Zambia, for example. So would you advise people to focus their marketing efforts on international expansion from the growth? Maybe just like target markets outside Zambia because you know it might be more successful there, or start from your country because you might have more connections. You might have more, like since it's your country, you can move there. There, it's much easier.
In most of the cases, it's hugely important to understand where are your target customers, who are they, how do they work, what is the scenario, the situation in which they use your product, and to address them directly. And so, for me, actually, in my job, I often need to address the products. With the products, we need to address the US market. I'm in the US every now and then, but I don't know the US as well as Europe, and so I'm actually very reluctant to decide on how the product should be when it's for the US market. I'm more confident to say how it should be when it's for the European market because that's what I know, and I think that is an important fact. So be clear in what user, what market you really understand, and address them. And look for partners to address the markets that you yourselves do not understand in enough detail. So if you have that situation where you have a mobile app in App Store and you're probably expert enough to launch it in Zambia and to also target the content for Zambia for the purpose and to be successful there. But I would then encourage you to partner and through the partnership address other market segments because they will know so much more than you know about the market for mobile apps in Saudi Arabia, just to make an example, right? I have no clue, right? And you probably also not, I would assume. But I'm very sure that it has its very specific mechanisms. And so I believe if you want to be successful in a very different market or in a different market, you need help. You need to partner with somebody who is more proficient in that market. Okay.
Okay, so let's just say you're building a medical application with a physical product as well, yeah.
Yep.
So let's just say your product, you're from Europe. I understand that Europe uses a different metric system than that of the US. And
Yep.
you say that one of your main targets is the US. So does that mean you create different products, or do you have to somehow, I don't know, translate the? This is just an example. Like,
Yeah, I mean that's a straightforward thing.
Okay.
That's a straightforward difference that you need to get right when you want to address the other market. The metric system and also translation, obviously, right? If you don't get that straight, that's kind of the most easy part. But then there's so much more complicated parts, like probably in our case, the medical doctor, has a very different job in Europe than in the US. Different responsibilities, a different situation at work, different systems available, different devices available, different expectations from the patient. So it's a different ball game at the end of the day, and you need to understand that ball game in the US, not the one in Europe. That one will not help you in the US. So it's really these subtle differences which are much more complicated to get straight than the obvious ones like translation
just
and
an
metric
example.
systems. No, I got the example
Okay.
for sure, but it's really at the end of the day it's quite complex. And also, how do you properly market in another market your product in another country? It's not easy at all. Okay. Good. Thank you so much for all the questions. On the last slide, I need to go back to that slide. I did put my contact details, so feel free to reach out either directly through email. I'm obviously on LinkedIn. Or to also reach out to Bongohive. I will be in touch with the guys here at Bongohive, and you can reach me through them also. Okay? Thank you so much again for your interest. Thank you so much for the great discussion we had, and hope to see you around.
Great.
Thank you.
Another round of applause. That was great, wasn't it? I said that, life does change in moments. For me, truth when he says most of the time when we were being trained, we were told about feasibility, go do your feasibility study. But one thing I like about that approach with desirability is I think about things like before the planes were there. I'm sure people could ask people in the past, like, would you like to fly? They're like, yes, I would love, right? But people didn't really think of it as something that would be feasible to do. Like, how will we fly as human beings? But it came from a place of desire. And he asked a question that was really important around if we're like in Zambia and we want to offer maybe opportunities and products outside the country. And I love how David brought a response to say, look, he understands Europe better, right? So now I'm thinking about us being able to build local solutions. How many of us know what the local people actually desire? Right? And think about it, not really from the place of is it feasible? We first ask ourselves, do people really want this? Right? Is there a true desire for this solution? And that can change the game. We can then begin to figure out how we get there later on. But that's really great. And thank you so much, David. You really did pack a very, very power packed presentation. A lot of those pointers really kind of resonated with a lot of us. And we definitely would love to get to hear you more as well. So whenever you're in Zambia, there's a place you can call home. And I'm sure people will be able to come through. So once more, thank you so much for being part of the process today. So a few things before we leave. If you had a great time today, you can feel free to review us. We do have a nice frame at the back, right on your way out. You can scan that code, the QR code, and just give us a review. It would be really nice for us as well. Would appreciate that. Another thing is that if you're code, we do have some